Pony.
Hello, everybody. What's up?
Tailsthehero.
JTH.
Oh, by the way, I got a new shirt. Yay. Yep. Awesomeness.
Yeah, awesomeness to the max. Yay.
Fluttershy shirt. And Fluttershy is not even my favorite pony, but still, I saw the shirt in Hot Topic and I was like, must have. So I bought it.
Well, anyways, me and Tailsthehero, we reached a conclusion. We're gonna do a bit of a pattern. You know how we read like a shipping fic? We're gonna do like different fic, clop fic, different, clop different.
Yeah, we decided to go on a schedule from now on.
Yeah, because we feel a little rude for people requesting clop fics and not reacting to them. We didn't get a request for this one. We just want to react to it because the title intrigued us. It's called My Little Problem. From what we see, it stars a human and Scootaloo.
Apparently, Scootaloo's older in this one, so
yeah, she's about the same age as the main six. Like she's all grown up and she's matured now.
Yeah, so it should be safe. No Philly foolery.
Yeah. All right, but anyways, here we go. My Little Problem.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. I had awoken to strange sounds coming from Scootaloo's room. I hopped out of bed and walked over to her room, pressing an ear up to the door to inspect the strange sounds. It sounded like she was in some sort of discomfort, and I was a bit worried. I knocked on the door a few times and called out to her. "Scoots, you okay in there?" I asked through the door. She let out a groan of discomfort before responding. I feel really weird," Scootaloo said through the door. I made my way inside and gave her a worried look. She seemed to be in extreme discomfort, and neither of us were sure what was going on. Sorry, my throat's a little scratchy. I placed the back of my hand on her forehead. No fever. Alright. What feels strange, Scoots? From what I can tell, you weren't sick. She shifted around a bit under her covers before responding. It feels weird in my special place, she said, moving her head towards her back legs.
I think I know what's going on.
I stared at her for a second, taking in the information. I don't know what to tell you, Scoots. I don't know much about pony ailments, but I can try to look it up if you want. She nodded her head before shuddering in discomfort. Alright, do you need anything else before I go? I asked her softly.
I think she might be in heat.
She nodded her head groggily. Can you get me a glass of water, please? It was then that I noticed a small amount of sweat accumulating on her body. I quickly walked downstairs to the kitchen and grabbed a glass from the cupboard. Walking over to the fridge, I grabbed some ice and placed it in the glass, filling it with cold water. Okay. On the way back to her room, I stopped into my office near the living room, setting the glass down at the computer table. Booting up the tower, I waited until it fully booted up before opening the web browser and began to search the internet for what could possibly be ailing Scootaloo. After a half hour or so of looking about, I ran into an article regarding the development cycles of ponies. Sounds like this guy found something. Once each year, a fully grown mare will undergo what is known as heat season. You were right.
Yeah, she's in heat.
She's in heat. During this period, the mare's hormones are in full force, and she is extremely fertile. This is the ideal time for fertilization of a mare, as they are very willing for a mate. The mare will become extremely aroused at the sight of males. Physical contact could result in a reaction of lordosis reflex. I guess that's how you say it.
Ludicrous, I think.
No, it says lordosis.
I don't understand that word, but okay.
Me either, but I guess that's how you say it. In which the mare spontaneously elevates her hindquarters in preparation for anticipated mating. Until heat season is over or the mare has her sexual needs fulfilled, she will experience extreme discomfort and slight pains.
Oh boy.
No wonder Scootaloo feels funny.
Yeah, I learned that because I had a friend who actually had a pasture. He owned horses.
Really?
And he told me about that. He had male horses, and female, and he had to know because since I think he owned 15 horses.
15.
Well, he ran a ranch. He would, people would come and pay him to ride the horses and stuff. But that went out of business. Unfortunately, he had to close it. Damn,
well, that sucks.
Damn economy.
I would have liked to take a horseback ride. That would have been fun.
I got bucked off a horse once.
Oh God, that had to suck.
It hurt.
Well, anyway, let's get back to what is going on. I stared at the screen for a few moments in bewilderment. I tried to process the information, but my brain was having problems with the contemplation. After coming to terms with the fact, I thought of what I could do. I didn't want Scoots to be in pain, but there was only one way I could. But there was no way I could sneak her away to anywhere near a pony. They're usually kept in areas too populated that would impede discreet travel. A horse would be too much for her, and I didn't want her to be in any more pain than she was already in.
Oh boy.
I get it.
Oh god.
I rubbed my face as I thought, beginning to worry more and more about Scootaloo's predicament. I hated to see her hurt, but there was nothing I could do. She needed stimulation, and there was no way I was going to do that. After mulling it over in my head for a while, I would decide she would just have to deal with her urges herself. I made my way back to her room with the glass of water in her hand and looked at her. She was groaning more and was sweating profusely.
Man.
Damn.
That's
gotta suck for Scootaloo.
Yeah.
And from what I saw in the description, this is the very first time this has happened to her.
Oh god. That's not good.
No, that's why she doesn't know what's wrong.
Oh.
I made my way into her room and spoke as I sat on the bed beside her. Scoots, how you feeling? I asked her, and I handed her the glass of water. She turned her head to me and let out a soft whimper in response. Well, I think I figured out what's wrong. She gave me a pleading look as she lay in bed, panting a bit and sweating more and more by the minute. Apparently you aren't sick. You're in heat, I said with a bit of hesitation. I can understand why you'd hesitate.
Well, yeah.
Now I'll scroll down a bit more. There we go. Heat? Scootaloo asked me. I looked at her for a moment before responding. I took in a deep breath before proceeding. Heat is when a mare is very fertile. The discomfort that you're feeling is your body wanting to mate. The last word died on my lips as nothing more than a mumble. Wanting to what? Scootaloo asked, sitting up in bed a bit. I hesitated before speaking once again. Wanting to mate, I answered awkwardly, sputtering like a nervous wreck. Scootaloo gave me a shocked expression and shook her head a few times, trying not to hear what I had just said. She leaned over and grabbed the cup by the bed, taking a large drink from her glass before setting it onto the nightstand beside her bed. If I were Scootaloo, I'd be shocked too. I picked up the glass from the nightstand and addressed her again. I know it's a lot to take in right now, Scoots, so get some rest and we can talk about it later. Scootaloo simply nodded at me before placing her head on the pillow and closing her eyes. God, that sucks.
Yeah.
Over the course of the next few days, Scootaloo slowly progressed through the other phases of her heat. She was beginning to get more and more uncomfortable as the days passed. I could see it starting to cause her pain. She would wince slightly at random intervals, causing my heart to sink lower each time. I didn't want this for her, and I could tell she didn't want it either. I told her multiple times that it was just natural, but it didn't seem to help much at all. She had tried to take care of her urges herself, but she said that didn't stop the pain. After about a week, she could barely get out of bed herself. She would simply lay on the couch all day, occasionally groaning every now and then. I did everything I could to make her more comfortable. I gave her pillows, I sat with her, and I just tried to be there for her if she needed me. I didn't want to risk touching her too much so as not to aggravate her body more than it needed to be. After another week or so, she seemed to be getting better. She was walking around a lot more and was able to get herself out of bed. Oh! Well, that's good. One thing that bothered me the whole time was the way she looked at me.
Oh, God.
I would occasionally catching her staring at me, her eyelids half closed and a wide grin stretched across her face. Oh, Jesus.
That's not cool.
She was still feeling discomfort, but it seemed like it had become less strenuous on her. Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah, I think.
Well, I would think it would have to be.
Oh, God.
One night I was laying in bed watching some TV when I heard loud groans coming from Scootaloo's room. She seemed to be in pain from how loudly she was groaning, and I became worried almost instantly. I got out of my bed and ran and... I messed up again. Damn it. I got out of bed and quickly made my way to Scootaloo's room, not even bothering to knock, and opened the door. My face flushed red as I stood in the doorway looking at Scootaloo. I think he knows what's happening. Don't you?
Yeah, I feel. Oh my god.
I
This
feel.
is gonna be. This is gonna be bad.
In the doorway. She was lying on her bed, hoof under the covers, crying and panting with her eyes shut. She opened her eyes and looked at me, tears streaming down her face with her hoof still moving under the covers. "Please help me," Scootaloo
Oh.
said with a pleading look. "It hurts so much." Scootaloo shut her eyes tight and let out another loud groan of pain, rubbing herself more furiously. My mind raced for a solution. I could only think of one, though.
Oh god, no.
Either I let this pony that I consider my daughter writhe in pain, or I fuck her. My mind was tearing itself apart. On one hand, I was helping her, but on the other, I would have to have sex with her.
God fucking damn it, that's messed up.
I took another look at Scootaloo, who was now sobbing into her frayed hoofs. Seeing that was all it took for me to make my decision. "Okay," I stated as I walked over to the bed.
Oh god. Messed up.
Scootaloo opened her eyes and looked at me, stopping her rubbing for a moment. "Really?" Scootaloo said, sniffing a bit.
I guess you gotta do what you gotta do.
I guess.
Just like Rocky says, I gotta do what I gotta do, Adrian.
Nice comparison, I guess. Well, think about it. He considers Scootaloo his daughter, and it hurts him to see her in pain.
Well, but still, that's gotta be tough, you know what I mean? Like, you consider her your daughter, and now you've gotta...
Fuck her.
Well, yeah, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for the guy too. I know how he feels. I know how he feels, definitely. Okay, sniffing a bit. "Yes, Scoots, I don't want to see you in pain anymore. I'll do whatever it takes to make the pain go away. Even if it means..." I trailed off before I could finish the statement. The thought of it was bad enough, but saying it was a whole other thing. Scootaloo sniffed a bit, and a lone tear fell down her face. I cupped the side of her face in one hand and wiped the tear away with my thumb. "No more crying, Scoots. I'm gonna make it all better. Trust me," I said to the poor orange mare. She wiped her eyes with her hooves and gave me a smile. I began to stroke my mane with her free hand while she nuzzled into the other. Okay. "So, how do we fix it?" she asked me with an inquisitive glance as she pulled away from my hand. I braced myself mentally for the following words that were about to leave my mouth. "I have to have sex with you, Scoots," I said in a serious tone. Looking down at Scootaloo on the bed, she shifted a bit and let out a small groan. I looked down at her marehood, which was a bit swollen from her constant rubbing. I climbed onto the bed and brought Scootaloo into a comforting hug. She began to twitch violently at the physical contact, and once I broke the hug, she put all four hooves on the bed and shot her flanks in the air, pointing her marehood directly at me.
God.
Just like that research he found said.
Oh, God.
Remember?
Yeah.
It said that. Oh, okay, that'll have to do. "Please, make the pain go away," Scootaloo begged heatedly in a pleading tone, looking back at me. I nodded as I began to unhook the button on my pants, my mind racing 1,000,000 times a minute. "You're helping her by doing this," I thought to myself as I unzipped the front of my jeans and pulled them off. Scootaloo whimpered a bit, and I hesitantly took off my boxers. Threw my boxers off to the side and stood up and... blech! Off to the side of the bed and stood up. My now erect member was but inches away from Scootaloo. I shakily placed my hands on her flanks and moved closer towards her. God, I know how this guy feels. I could feel warmth radiating off her and onto my member. "Okay, Scoots, are you ready?" I said, looking at her for approval. She nodded at me and turned her head to face the opposite wall. I slowly moved closer, inch by inch, still wondering if this was the right thing to do. I looked down at her and what was about to happen, and I stopped.
Oh, my God. I feel for the guy.
So do I.
I mean, like, just think about it. Like,
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to do that either.
me either.
I mean, God. Oh, well, let's continue reading. I'm getting... This is actually interesting to me.
Yeah, same here. Why did you stop?
Scop? I didn't know scop was involved.
My bad.
Yay for scopping.
My bad. Why did you stop? Scootaloo asked, looking back at me. I can't do it, Scoots. I can't do this to you. This isn't right in so many ways. I removed my hands from her flanks and took a few steps back. I looked Scootaloo in her grayish-purple eyes, watching her tear up a bit before she spoke. Please, Daddy, It hurts so much. I just want the pain to go away, no matter what it takes.
She called him Daddy.
Please. She began to cry, still looking me in the eyes. My heart broke at the sight of her crying, but I didn't know if I could bring myself to do it. Could I really have sex with this mare that I considered my daughter?
Like I said, you gotta do what you're gonna do. What choice does he have?
I guess. My thoughts were cut off as an orange hoof lay itself on my hand. I looked down at it and then back at Scootaloo. She was sitting up on the bed now, but she was still crying and tears were pouring down her face. I stared at her for a long while, just looking into her eyes as she cried. She must have been in so much pain, and I didn't even realize. I squeezed her hoof in my hand and finally spoke. I love you, Scoots, more than you could ever imagine. If this is what it takes for you to stop being in pain, then I'll do it. A small smile grew on Scootaloo, and I softly smiled back at her, brushing some of the tears off her face. I brought her into a hug and broke it after a short while. Can't believe this guy's really gonna go through with this.
Well, what choice does he have?
True.
I mean,
Like you said, it's not like he can sneak her off to anywhere.
yeah.
Scootaloo rolled around and stuck her ear in the air, pointing it at me once again. I inched closer to her, placing my hands on her flanks, squeezing her thighs, and positioned myself close to her. I looked at her and she gave me a small nod. It did little to boost my confidence. I knew that what I was doing was wrong in so many ways, but at the same time, I was doing this to help Scoots. That was all I needed to tell myself before I placed my member near her folds and began to push in slightly.
That was my friend.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, I'm still listening.
Okay.
Stop it.
The head of my member entered her, and we both let out a loud moan as a wave of pleasure overcame us. I slowly began to push more into her, soliciting a long, drawn-out moan from Scootaloo as I eased my way into her. Oh god, I know what this means. I felt myself reach her hymen, and I stopped to look at her. This may hurt a bit, Scoots, I said to her. She looked at me and nodded, shutting her eyes and waiting for me to continue. I pushed slowly, and I could feel something trickle onto my member as I pushed past.
God, stop it.
Scootaloo...
Dude,
He
really?
sure is texting you a lot.
Alright, keep reading. I'm sorry. I'm gonna turn this down.
Scootaloo screamed in pain, and I stopped while I waited for her pain to subside. You know what he just did, right?
Yeah, I know.
After about a minute, she looked back at me, a few tears in her eyes, and nodded at me, letting me know it was okay to continue. I could see small amounts of blood leaving her, and her face had tears running down it. I wiped the tears from her face and a bit of blood from her coat, giving her a soft smile as I did so. I continued to slowly push more and more into her, and eventually my member was fully inside her, throbbing from the feeling. I slowly pulled myself out of her wet mirrorhood before slowly thrusting into her once again. She let out a small scream and plopped her head onto the bed, panting out the words, "More," and "Please."
God.
I began to increase the speeds of my thrust, slowly feeling the pressure build up in my member as it moved in and out. Scootaloo was letting out small screams each time I thrust, but it was full-blown yelling after a minute or two. "Faster! Harder!" Scootaloo pleaded to me. I obliged and let primal instincts take over, slamming myself against her with each thrust. The sound of our skin slapping together echoed throughout the room, but was drowned out by our panting and screams of pleasure. The pleasure was beginning to become unbearable, but I could tell Scootaloo was close as well.
Oh, God.
"Scoots, I think I'm gonna..." I was cut off as my member was clenched tightly by her walls, and she let out a loud scream. This was enough to push me over the edge, and with a few final thrusts I released into her, my seed sprang deep into her. Wow. I pulled back and watched my cum slowly drip out of her twitching marehood. We were both panting heavily, and School looked as though she was about to fall asleep. I sat down on the bed, my member slowly going soft as we both sat exhausted on the bed. We sat there for a while, trying to catch our breath. After a few minutes, I spoke. "So, Scoots, how you feeling?" I stood up and slowly walked over to the side of the bed where Scoots was. She was still panting slightly, but I caught her breath enough to speak. It doesn't hurt anymore, if that's what you're asking. She began to regulate her breathing and sat up so she was face to face with me. Thank you, Dad. I know it was difficult, but I really appreciate it. Scootaloo wrapped her hooves around me and gave me a tight hug, which I gladly returned. We sat there for a few minutes, simply hugging, happy that the whole ordeal was over. Now would you please put some pants on?
No.
Scootaloo broke the hug and threw my boxers at my face. I slipped them on and sat down on the bed next to her.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, cupcakes.
Cupcakes.
I love you, Scoots. Don't ever forget that, I said, stroking her mane a bit. She smiled at me and responded with an, I love you too. I could worry about cleaning the sheets tomorrow. Right then I was having trouble keeping my eyes open.
Oh, God.
Damn. It was strange, but the next morning felt normal, I guess would be the best to describe it. Other than the sheets needing to be cleaned, the next day went over normally. We had some breakfast and started up on Scoot's flying lessons. I may not have known much, but the internet sure was full of information.
No kidding.
After a few hours of training, Scootaloo flew over next to me and sat down on her haunches. Everything okay, Scoots? I asked as I took a seat next to her. Well, there's just something that's been on my mind for a bit. Well, go ahead and ask. I'm sure it's nothing too serious. I put a comforting hand on her shoulder and gave her a warm smile, waiting for her reply. Well, won't this happen again next year?
Oh, man.
My face went blank for a moment as what she said sank in. This would happen again next year, but we would be ready next time. I was knocked out of my stupor when Scootaloo began to speak again. You'll be there for me, right, Daddy?
Aww.
I looked down at her and smiled warmly as I spoke. I'll always be there for you, Scoots, I answered, ruffling her thick purple mane. How about them flying lessons, Scootaloo? I teased. I'd love that, she screeched in excitement, zipping out of the kitchen window and into the yard. Hurry up, Dad. I'm not going to get better at this on my own, she chided back. Laughing heartily, I jogged out of the back door and began her daily flight lessons just like old times. The end.
Wow. That was nice. I mean,
that was interesting.
I like the way, that story makes it like so, it makes it real, like if that actually happened to you, like that's what you'd have to do. I mean, it's not something you'd want to think about, but
yeah, you're right.
Pretty good story. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I did too.
Interesting story, very, very realistic, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a good story. I liked it.
Yay, by the way.
That's what we have to say about it.
Yeah, yay.
Yay.
All right, well, we'll do something later.
Yeah, and for now, this is JTH.
And Mr. Tailsthehero.
And we will see you in our next fanfic reaction.
Oh, by the way, go Team USA in the Olympics.
Yeah, and we will see you in our next reaction. Goodbye.